So I think of it in terms of a lot of social change, and especially in relationship to the environment, I think of what I call the 4 levels of action. The first is individual action. The second is action with my friends and family, the folks I'm directly connected to. The third is community and local institutions. And the fourth is the economy and policy change and changing laws. And so, in the environment, level 1 is, I recycle, I use less, I drive less. Level 2 is I get me and my family to do that. And maybe I put solar panels on my roof, and maybe I join a community-supported agriculture, a CSA. Level 3 is that's when I start to do things like change the way the schools that I'm connected to, right? The way that I change my workplace, that maybe I organize in my town, right, to start moving towards a community solar array, or that I start to, I go into the industries that I work in and I make changes. And the idea for level 3 for me is the place where it's at the level of institution and groups, but where I'm still known as a person, And so the example, and the other model that I give for level 3 is, if I can get in touch with a person who's in charge within about a week and get a meeting, that's what I would consider to be about level 3. Like with some work, I can get a brief meeting with the mayor of my town, right? And then level 4 is, like I say, policy. It's change the law. It's write your congressperson. It's boycott this product. And the environmental movement, I think in a lot of ways, has given the message that's been at level 1 and level 4, right? Change individual actions, or sign this petition, lobby this person, right? And the thing is, I think our greatest impact is actually at level 2 and level 3, and especially level 3. And the reason that I say that is, if I change a local institution or something that I'm involved in, I'm not just impacting my life, I'm impacting the lives of hundreds or maybe thousands of people. I'm also changing an institution, and then other institutions can take a look at that and take the model for that change. So an example is, like say I get the local school to put solar panels on their roofs. I can actually get that done. That's a project that I can see through beginning to end in a year or two. And I can talk to all the people who are involved in it, and I can figure out the economics of that, like how much would it save and how much would it work and what would the cost be. I can organize and create a coalition to get it done, and I can do this part-time. I don't have to do this full-time. But the conversation that I get to generate at the school is a big piece of the change, right? That the conversation with the principals and with the students and with the PTA is as useful as the change itself. And we're getting into this idea of, we could do something about this. And then when the solar panels go up, then that means all of the other schools in the neighborhood or in my city have to go, why don't we have solar panels? I mean, this school did it. And so that's a level of a change that I think that we ought to be focusing on. And I think specifically with Drawdown, like there's these 100 solutions that are named in Drawdown. And the question is, how are they going to be implemented? But one of the things that the project did is that they looked at projects that were happening at what I've heard Paul Hawkins call from the middle out. Not just from the grassroots up, not just from the top down, but from most of those changes were organized by people working at level 3. That it was farms figuring out how to change their farms and change their relationship to the market. It was, solar panels started very much at the municipal level. And so, doing environmental regeneration and afforestation, like there are large-scale national policies that do that, but a lot of it is local folks in a community who have a connection to a particular piece of land that have said, let's replant this forest or let's regenerate this river, right? And so the implementation of Drawdown in a lot of ways is going to be at level 3. And that's where the momentum gets changed, because then it creates models for change and the sense that people see the possibilities of doing it. It's also a level at which a lot of people can participate. And we do not have to wait for anyone. We don't have to wait for Congress. We don't have to wait for a company like Kmart or Walmart to change what they're doing. We don't have to do that, right? We can change it at the level of the institution. And that's where I think the momentum is going to be implemented. So to get back to that question of I drove here, and that sense of it, it's, should I figure out ways to use public transportation and to not drive? Yes. And I do that also because that's my level 1, and because I'm trying to teach myself to get used to the new society that I think we're going to have to move into. And It's also, it's also so that I walk my talk. Those are all really important pieces. And do I get my family and friends to do the same thing? Yes. But working with teenagers taught me something really important. When I was working with them on environmental questions and we were re-examining the whole thing, they said, if it's not fun, don't talk to us. They're like, if something for the environment isn't something as an opportunity to socialize, then you're already done. And I was like, that's brilliant. So first of all, that was this phenomenal lesson to me about working with teens. And then the second piece, though, was, right, I should be doing the same thing. What is up with all this grim, self-hating, blah, blah, blah? It's like, no. It's like, hey, let's all go to the farmer's market together. And so I try to go to the farmer's market with my friend. Let's carpool together. Let's be on BART together. It's like that level 2 element of making it social. I was sort of like, oh, it's this great pointing towards doing this as community because it's more fun and enjoyable to do that. And then when I do that, then we can really do level 3, and that's where the change comes. And level 4 is also important. Sign the petitions, write the congressperson, donate to Greenpeace, do all of those things. But do it in this kind of whole system of, I think for me, is the way that we integrate all of these changes, and that I can know that I'm really doing something, and not do it from a place of guilt, but do it from a place of, I'm going to change something. I'm going to change the largest thing that I can change, that I can actually touch.
Elaborate on any aspect of that on this topic?
No, nothing right now. For Frank,
Okay.
I want to add, I just thought of one more piece that I can add.
Please.
In terms of this idea of kind of the level 2, level 3 change, another thing that I think about is, I think that the framing that a lot of folks think about in relationship to making change is that becoming an environmental activist, right? And so they have to be standing out on a corner with a clipboard saying, do you have a minute to talk about the environment? Or they have to be lobbying all the time, or they have to leave their job, gain a new profession, and go towards that. But I think it's actually in the opposite direction. I think people can and should and need to stay in exactly the realms where they are. Because the truth is, we're going to have to change everything. Everything about it. What we eat, how we produce power, the clothes we wear, all of this. And every profession has a role to change. Every neighborhood is a place that can make the change. And so I think it's powerful for people to realize that the where they live and how they live and where they work is exactly the place where they can make the change. And so an example that I think of is, I'm blanking on the name, but it's a MacArthur Genius Grant winner a couple of years ago came up with a very simple idea. He worked in hospitals and he cared about climate change. But instead of changing everything else, he just started changing the hospital that he was working in. And what he did is that he realized, he did some research, and hospitals are some of the most energy-intensive industries, and they're the most energy-intensive buildings outside of factories. And he said, he's like, if I get solar panels on my, if we start to use regenerative power, he's like, I can do that at this hospital, and I can make a business case for it. And I know the chief financial officer, and I know he's a doctor. He's like, I know the people, I know the whole hierarchy. I can make this change. And then he realized, wait, there's another element to this. He's like, the power that's being produced is also, he found out that a lot of the power that was feeding his hospital was from waste incineration. And it was actually creating the cancers that they were trying to solve. And he took it from a public health point of view. So that really snapped the doctors. He knew their mindset. And he was like, wait, we're creating the problems that then we're trying to heal. And so he changed the hospitals. And then for the past 20 years, he's made an entire career out of this. Now, so that's the idea of going into a career, but his first round was changing what he could actually control. Another example is that I have friends who are psychologists and therapists. And they were asking me what they could do after they saw some of my presentations. And I said, eco-anxiety is getting really real, and people are deeply immobilized. And there's studies on this, that actually the problem is not that we don't have enough information about climate change and about what's happening with the environment. The problem is that we have too much, we don't have frameworks for solutions, and people are actually immobilized. And I said, so there are so many ways that you could use the skills that you have. And just off the top of my head, I was like, if your clients are having anxiety, like maybe ask them if it isn't the world situation and giving them a chance to talk about that. Maybe it's working with local organizations and advocacy organizations and saying, you know, can we talk about this? Can we talk about the way that you're framing your message? I was like, maybe give free sessions to people who do work in solar arrays or do stuff on environmental racism because of the intensity of the work that they're doing. But I was like, don't become something else. Use the skills that you have in order to make the change.